All right, now, it says here, testimonial time. Some guy named Joe Powell is supposed to do this. And I believe that's me.
Geronimo?
Anyway, I would like to begin by going back to my youth. When I was a young boy, I was basically moved around here, there, and everywhere. Um, my mom and dad didn't look after us. Um, different people did, including my grandmother. And I was basically moved to places where I didn't want to go. I had no choice, I guess. And it felt strange in the beginning of a life like that. And then it dawned on me around 5 or 6 that I have actually parents. And I would notice them every now and then on the streets of the fall. And then it just dawned on me why they didn't look after us. And I couldn't figure it out right away. Only later that I figured out that the alcohol was ruling their lives. Was they chose an alcoholic life over raising kids. So we children, my sister, my brother, myself, were looked after by others. And this got me very depressed. Uh, when a little child is in depression, such as I was, the outlook of the world doesn't really seem bright. It's a downer actually. And as that builds, you start to hate your mom and dad. I got to the point where I really hate my mom and dad. Growing up in places wasn't very nice. My dear brother, Alfred, he took he took the blunt of some of the beatings that we had. I was younger, and my brother got the worst of it because he was older. And when you live a life like that, you kind of wonder what's going on. I mean, why does it have to be this way? Um, when I used to go to school, going to school was a safe haven for me. I wanted to go to school because there was peace. There I can get away from things. But when school was over and I had to go back, it was a dread. I didn't want to go back to that home. Because this was the things were different at that time. Much of the stuff were hidden. And I couldn't go to anybody, to tell them what's going on. Until I got old enough, started to express myself a little bit. I told my grade 2 teacher, Mrs. Carpenter, of what was going on. She felt so bad for me, but yet she couldn't do anything about it. And then I started going to Sunday school. I met this old man, I forgot his name now, but he used to come there in Sunday school and then I met Mr. McComb. Then I met a small man who was the same height as me at the time. His name was Bill Jackson. I think Kenny knows him.
Still same height as you.
Yeah, I started meeting believers, eh? That intrigued me at that time. And also in the testimonials and some of the meetings that they had, they were talking about being saved. That word saved was strange to me because they're talking about being saved. God saved me. God saved me. Huh? And I used to think as a kid, well, God never saved me. So I don't know how they got saved, but I certainly don't feel saved. Because the way I figured it out at the time was God was for certain people. God was not for these people. And certainly I belong here. And God doesn't really care about me, about us, me. Because if he's God, then he knows what's going on. I remember talking to a missionary lady, and I told her about stuff like that. She said, God sees everything. God knows everything. And I said, now wait a minute here. You mean God knows what's happening here? What's happening? And she said, yes. Why doesn't he do anything about it then? No, I'm starting to hate God. Here is, you talk about an all-powerful being who can do anything he wants, but yet he can't help us. For a little kid to think like that. I don't know about this God. See, I believed in God, Nobody had to tell me God is not there. He's there. This I firmly believed as a kid. I knew he existed. But him being part of my life or doing something for me, no, he's not doing that. And that's how I went through my life. And anyway, the authorities finally come and got us out of the home where we were at because they heard of the abuses that me and my brother were going through. We finally left that place. And my granny took her in. Oh, bless my grandmother. She had an overload of children to look after. It's amazing how in the 60s, how many parents started to abandon their roles as parents for the sake of living their own life their own way. And my grandmother took me and my brother in, my sister, my uncles, both of my uncles' children's, my cousins, were living in the home. There were 15 of us in there. My grandmother took the load in, us. I didn't know how hard it was for her till later. I just took it for granted that I'm in a safe place and I'm okay now. Not knowing the burden was on her to see us kids through. She made a statement one time that I hope one of these days one of my children will follow the Lord. I didn't know what she meant by that. See, I didn't know what Christianity was. I didn't even know she was a Christian. Christianese was a foreign language to me. But she was a believer. I found that out later. She used to talk to me. She used to cry for me. She used to pray for me. But it fell on deaf ears because I had an issue with God, an issue with Him. And I went through life kind of like a hard man. One of the major issues in my life to deal with was anger. I was an angry man. I really was. My only protector that I found in life was my brother. How he used to hold me and protect me when I was a kid. I loved my brother immensely. And that's the only one I can go to in times of difficulty. Anyway, as we lived our life, I started getting into my teenage years and stuff. One tragic day, a friend of mine woke me up in the morning and said, "Joe, get up, I got something to tell you." I said, "What?" "Your brother's dead. He got shot last night." I thought he was joking. I said, what? He said, "Your brother got shot last night. He's dead." No. That was a numbing experiences. That it wasn't real. In actuality, 5 people got shot that night. It was my aunt and uncle, my 2 cousins Sam and Simon, and my brother. And I was just blown away. The very person in my life is gone. And I don't want to turn to. Who do I talk to? And yes, my anger for God worsened. I was mad at God. I was mad at Him. inner voice said, how dare you? How dare you take it away? I was so angry. Anyway, when a person walks away from God or has nothing to do with God, he's on his own. I was on my own. I didn't care. I did not care. This is my life. I know it's rotten. Who cares? If God, you don't care, so be it. I don't care either. Do what you want. The very person that held life to me has some kind of meaning was him. I was gone. So now I'm alone. For the next few years, I didn't think of God. I lived an ungodly life. It's like God was out of the picture. I didn't even think about him for the next years. And then what turned this around, what turned this around was this. There was this young girl that came to me. And she said, hello, what's your name? And I said, how old are you? She said, I'm 19. Sure you are, I said. 19, you're 12 years old. But that's grace, eh? Yeah, when I met Grace, she was, man, she was young looking. I mean, like a child, eh? And she's interested in me. I said, ooh, I better stop it here. I'm not going to jail. And she said, no, I'm 19 years old. And I said, sure you are. Yeah, you know. And this girl, to me, this girl was trying to grow up too fast. That's the way I thought. That's the way I figured. And then, as I was talking to her, she said, there's two of my sisters. They'll tell you how old I am. So I called them in. Was it Ola and Justine? Yeah. I said, come here. Is this your sister? They said, yes. How old is she? 19. No way. He said, yeah, that's our sister, yeah. And I thought they were in cahoots. You know, I didn't believe them. I did not believe them. Anyway, the father walks in, Barney. And I said, well, here's my dad, ask him. So I went to the father, Barney. I said, oh, Barney, is that your daughter over there? I pointed to Grace. Yeah, that's my daughter. How old is she? 19, I think. Are you serious? I said, no, I know my own daughter. I said, yeah, she's 19. And I said, okay, she's 19. Okay, then, all right then. She's 19. I will allow you to be with me, I told her. Yeah, you know how they skip along, yeah. And anyway, that's how we met her. That's how we began. And I took her home to my grandmother. I wanted to introduce her to my grandmother. I took her home, and my grandmother looked at her, and she said to me, "Get inside." And she told Grace to stay outside. And my grandmother told me in the house, "Joe, are you nuts?" She said it in Korean. "Are you crazy? You can't hang around with a young girl like that. You're gonna go to jail. You're gonna get locked up. And then you stay here." I was trying to explain, but she wouldn't give me a word edgewise. And she went and told Grace and yelling at her, get out of here, get lost. You know, you can't be bothering my boy like this, because my grandmother was really protective of me, that I was about to do a very foolish thing. But I was trying to explain to her, no, she's 19. Yeah, right, sure she is. But anyway, fast forward, it took him a few months to make him realize that Grace was as old as she says she was. And even if other families, my cousins and stuff, they ride me for a while. I don't know that one. Anyway, that's how I met Grace. And when we got married, she hit the jackpot there. Yeah, we had Charlene, her daughter. And I remember holding my daughter, 6 months year old. I said, "What am I going to do with you? Am I going to be a good father? Am I going to do to you what my mom and dad did to me?" And I didn't want that. I said, there's no way I'm going to do to her what my mom and dad did to me. No, I'm not doing that. I was determined to be a good father and a good husband. But I was still, at that time, my alcoholism and drug addiction began to take effect more and more. Okay? And Grace felt the brunt of that that anger when I got drunk, drugged up. And it wasn't so much me taking it out on her as much as me trying to take it out on God and my mom and dad. That's how anger is. The fallout is on the ones closest to you. And Grace had to put up with that. She used to dig in my pockets when I was out, passed out sometimes, and out of it. She told me later on that when I sobered up, that whenever I passed out, she used to look for my drugs and just flush them, get rid of them. I didn't know that, but she did that. And I talked to Grace later in life that I apologized for all the stuff that I did in that anger. And but I wanted to be a good father. I used to work for the railroad, eh? In the railroad, you're it's a hard working job, but it pays well. Okay, it it paid well. I mean, Grace's eyeballs went big every payday. And I didn't need much. I didn't need much. I gave most of it to her because I was on the road all the time. I was out there in the boondocks somewhere. Who needs money out there? Because long as I took care of them, that's good. And Grace said she used to eat in restaurants all the time. She said, that's what she did, and I said, good for her. Anyway, that's how I started like that, but more and more, I started getting worse in alcohol and drugs, and then Grace would leave me from time to time. I would come home, she's gone with Charlene, and I would beg her to come back. She'll come back. And she'll leave again, that kind of thing, back and forth kind of thing. And then I remember one Christmas time when she was not there. I really miss Grace and Charlene at Christmas. It was a down and out feeling for me. I don't care how much drugs or alcohol or how much surrounded by friends you are. If family's not there, it's a real emptiness. And I didn't like it. And I didn't know God would answer me. But this is what I said. God, if you're listening, I don't know how you're going to change this guy around. But I love this, I love that, I love this. I was being honest with him. I love this and that. I had a handful of things that I love doing sinfully. I said, I don't know how you can change a guy like that, change a man's heart. I don't know how you're going to do this. And I asked that you bring Grace and Charlene back to me. And when I finished praying that prayer, it was a few days later, Grace came back home with her stuff. And I was pretty shocked at that. But she came back, and Grace took one look at the house, and it was in shambles, man. It was upside down wreckage, man. Because I used to party all the time. And Grace just kind of went, and she began to clean up. Didn't say a word, just began to clean up. And I said, oh, maybe God does answer. Maybe he's listening to me. I don't know. But anyway, I said, okay, I got to make a go of this, but I don't know how I'm going to do this. I really don't know how to do this. Anyway, my brother-in-law come and visit me that Christmas. His name is Brian Duchamp. That was December 24th, 1984. He come and got me and said, Joe, I want you to spend Christmas with us at Cornwall. And I said, okay, good. So I took back Grace and Charlene and we went. When we got to Cormant, there was a big party going on over there. And I drank from December 24th right to January 3rd. Every day. Drinking with the Duchamp boys. And on Thursday night, around 9 o'clock, 9:30, January 3rd, I was holding a bottle of beer, and Brian said, hey, your bottle is empty. Slide it over to me, and I did. Slid it over across the table. He propped up another full bottle, and he slid it to me. When the bottle slid across the table, and he grabbed it, right there. In a split second. That's how fast it was. God changed it. You don't think God can do that? He did it for me. Split second. The craving of alcohol was gone. The mindset was different. My heart was different. It was like night and day. Something just happened to me. I told Brian, I'm done with drinking. He said, okay, have a good night then. He says, I said, no, I'm done. I am done. He said, "Oh, okay. I want to wake up Grace, who was sleeping in the room. And I said, Grace, guess what? He said, what? I'm done drinking. I'm finished. Okay, good. Go to bed now. No, I'm serious. Yeah, okay, go to sleep. And I was astounded. I wanted to tell people what just happened here. Anyway, I tried to sleep and I was able to get a few winks. But the next day, I told Grace, I'm done with this. You know, and I went into AA a couple of days later. I went to Rosier House. And it's in Rosier House I began to talk about God, about what God is doing to me. And it didn't take long for the staff to say, Joe, could you not say God? Could you say good? Or higher power even? And I found that kind of strange, you know. Why would they, you know? But anyway, as I was with AA, I found out there's a difference here. They didn't want so much to do with God or Jesus Christ, other than to be their own work. It's like it's like it's like taking the teachings of Jesus Christ and separating him from Jesus himself. It's kind of like that. Okay, that's how they operate. And with AA, you can do what you want, say what you want, as long as you stay sober. You're basically doing the same thing but being sober. And I didn't like that. I didn't like being in a crowd like that, where they say anything they want, do anything they want, talk about women the way they want. And I said, this is no good. I want change here, but I don't know where to go. Then I remember Stanley Fitchner. I said, Stanley, do you still go to church in Bugatti? He said, yeah. Could I go with you on Sunday night? He said, sure. So he picked me up. And I started going Sunday evenings to church in Bugatti, where Dennis was the pastor there. And to me, listening to Dennis was, I don't want to insult you, Dennis, but he wasn't the flashiest preacher, you know. But at that particular night, April 6th, Sunday evening, when we used to have evening services, his words, the ones he was using that night, it's just like God talking to you personally, you know. I was so moved by this, and I was going, he's talking about me. How does Dennis know this stuff? You know, I was going, how does Dennis know this? And but anyway, I was so moved by it. God was talking to me. And then when Dennis gave the invitation to accept Jesus Christ, I knew without a doubt that I had to get up and do this. God is calling me. I have to answer this. And I told Grace, I'm going up there. I have to give my life. And Grace says, what do you mean? What do you mean? You know, what are you talking about? You know, no, I gotta do this, Grace. She didn't know what I was trying to do. But I went and I said the sinner's prayer with Dennis. And that's when things really changed. Right there. When I gave my life over to Jesus Christ. It was that born again experience was a very real thing for me because again it was night and day. My conscience was sharpened. This very warm feeling came over my body, very very warm, very accepted feeling that I was home. I was forgiven. And my anger for God was no more. And, and I was so struck by that. Here is a guy who was angry at God, and yet God, in His grace and mercy, allowed me to live the life I lived, and allowed me to wander off. But still, at some point, He would contact me, He would get a hold of me. And, and I was so struck by that. I was amazed of the forgiveness that I received from Him when I accepted His Son Jesus Christ. And I like to read a portion of Scripture in closing here. It's in Luke 23, I believe. I don't have my vocal glasses here, but I'm going to try to read what I got. And this is in Luke 23, starting verse 39. Then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." But the other answered, rebuking him, saying, "Don't you even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." When I started reading the Bible and I read this, I was so overcome. I cried. Then I thought about my brother, the way he died. I thank God for the salvation. I really did. But my heart went down and was in great despair of my brother. The way he died, I said, "Lord, I would gladly trade my salvation if if you can save my brother." Because according to the scriptures I've been reading so far, those who were not saved, are lost, condemned. It was hard for me to take in about my brother. And that stayed with me for a while. That grieved me for a while. I've always thought of that as I was living, as I was starting to grow as a Christian. And then in 1993, I went to a summer camp called the Riverside Bible Camp. I went working with Doug Reeder. And one of the speakers for the third week was some guy named Fred Evans. You guys know who that guy is? He was a speaker that week. I remember his first message for the kids and stuff like that on Monday. And then lunch break. And then the kids were all piling up in the buses to go to the lake. And me and Fred sat down and had a cup of tea in the shade. And then Fred turns around and says to me, Joe, isn't it great that you're going to see your brother Alfred in heaven one of these days? That's what he said to me. And I was struck by that. I started to get angry at Fred. I said, Fred, why did you say something like that? You know how my brother died. And why would you say something like that? He said, Joe, don't you know? I said, what do you mean, don't I know? You mean you don't know? I said, what are you talking about? Joe, I was with your brother, me and Mr. McComb, and we led your brother to the Lord before he died.
Wow.
I, I was stunned.
Praise God.
I was stunned.
Thank you, Jesus.
Oh man. Talk about news, eh? Talk about news. But the other answering, rebuking him, saying, don't you even fear God, seeing that you're under the same condemnation? For we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing. Then he said to Jesus, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, assuredly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. And I was so overwhelmed with what Fred said. I said, thank you, God.
Yes.
Thank you for your mercy
Yes, Lord.
and your grace upon me and him. We had a rough go of it, but your eye was upon us. You looked after us. I apologize for being angry at you, God. It was my parents who did that. It was their choices. We suffered under their choices, not you, them. So I repent, Lord, of my anger to you. You're a merciful God. You're a loving God. You're a forgiving God. And now I see your hand is in this. You saved my brother. You saved me. And I will see my brother again in paradise.